good, bro? So, if you viewed somewhere like that, what would your initial perspective on them be? Like, how would you initially see them? Let me switch it up real quick. What about now? You see, just from like a simple clothes change and maybe some glasses, it gives a whole different vibe. And a little posture too. It's a whole different vibe to how you could see somebody. That's what we're kind of going to get into during this video essay. Looking at different ways perspectives can be put on people just based off social class, race, and just how they look in general. In our everyday lives, if you walk around long enough, you could find somebody who feels entitled or has a feeling of something over somebody else. Maybe you yourself have had a feeling like this, possibly feeling intellectually superior to somebody. Not even on purpose, it just happens. For some people, this stems from how they grew up or the social status of their life. And in the short story Revelation by Flannery O'Connor, she illustrates how social classes can affect how people think or act towards others. The larger conversation dives into how social class guides our behaviors, how we think, and can even influence voting. In an article published by Princeton University, 3 authors named Nicole Stevens, Lydia Emery, and Sarah Townsend bring up the same point and state that social class is one of the most consequential social divides of our time. Social class begins with inequalities in material resources, but its influence on psychology and behavior are vast. So social division comes from material goods that social standards are set on, and then the views are based on social standards that become accepted by society. Despite this, we don't necessarily need to get rid of social classes as a whole, but people should not be treating other people differently or arbitrarily based solely on social standards that are set. Starting off with social standards in this short story, Revelation, the standards are based on social classes from back in the 1900s. Social standards of today are very different. They're more based on wealth, prosperity, and it was more based on race back then. Miss Turpin in the story deems herself as blessed and highly favored compared to everyone else she's around. She sees everyone else as beneath her, basically because she's white and wealthy. Mary Grace, the teenager reading the book, was visibly displeased with how she was acting. And Miss Turpin even noted that in the story. If I had seen someone out here bragging about clothes and money and making that their personality, the main part of their personality, I would kind of view that person as morally messed up. And building on that, Miss Turpin is displayed as morally blind in the story. She gives off self-righteousness and a judgmental attitude basically the whole time. And Mary Grace was outraged by this, which is why she had a violent act of protest to it by throwing a book to her dome, which is an overstatement of how we should react to social injustices in our society right now. The Bible doesn't support the way Miss Turpin was acting, and she mentioned God more than anything else. According to the Princeton published article, they state, currently, people's social class origins have a profound impact on life opportunities and outcomes. This is saying that where you come from can shape the future of your life in all aspects. Social class being an important factor in the way our lives are swayed is something I want to point out. But even though social class of your origins heavily impacts you as a person, the personality branch of ourselves is rooted more in our parents. The article written by Science Insights talks about how most of the personality traits and niche characteristics they brew from our parents, but social class accounts for the rest of us. Knowing most people don't choose their social class and personalities, it emphasizes even more as to why we shouldn't be treating people without respect or courtesy, especially if Jesus is at the center of your life. The Bible doesn't support the way Miss Turpin was acting, and she mentioned God almost more than anything else. I can see the hypocrisy in what I've said regarding acceptable responses to people who display social class superiority or judgmental attitudes. However, those were examples solely purposed for examining the main point, which is to have it towards in our society people are not being looked at with prejudice based on what their social class is viewed as. We don't always have to have an input about something. Similarly, we can go back to my introduction discussion where I talked about how some people are just gonna behave how they are, how they want, and we can just stay quiet and move on. To sum up everything, people should not be getting treated differently based on how they're viewed socially. We don't need to be speaking on people who we don't even know personally. In the Princeton article, the three authors illustrate how social class origins impact who we become in our life. And pointing back to my introduction discussion again, I quote myself in saying you don't always have to correct how people see you. What I've gone over in this video says that some people view social classes as a hierarchy, and you could end up on the receiving end of judgment or being poorly treated. But peace within yourself should be prioritized, since some people were literally subconsciously raised to be the way they are. The call to action would be to make sure we're not looking down on others, especially for reasons such as social class or race. Treating everyone the way we want to be treated, same way they say it in schools.